مين أحن منك؟ جاهزين؟ 1 2 3. مين أحن منك قال تيجي إليه، وفي كل ضيقي وتعبي اتكل عليه. تاني، مين أحن منك قال تيجي إليه، وفي كل ضيقي وتعبي اتكل عليه. يا قاضي الأرامل، يا أبو الأيتام، يا قاضي الأرامل، يا أبو الأيتام، حلال المشاكل، صانع السلام، حلال المشاكل، صانع السلام. مين أحن منك قال تيجي إليه، وفي كل ضيقي وتعبي اتكل عليه. الأشبال احتاجت والأسود بتجوع، الأشبال احتاجت والأسود بتجوع، أما المؤمنين أشبعهم يسوع، أما المؤمنين أشبعهم يسوع. مين منك قال تيجي إليه، وفي كل ضيقي وتعبي اتكل عليه. مين أحن منك قال تيجي إليه، وفي كل ضيقي وتعبي اتكل عليه. إن طلبت غيرك انتظاري طول، إن طلبت غيرك انتظاري طول، لكن إن دعيتك بتجيني على طول، لكن إن دعيتك بتجيني على طول. مين منك قال تيجي إليه، وفي كل ضيقي وتعبي اتكل عليه. مين أحن منك قال تيجي إليه، وفي كل ضيقي وتعبي اتكل عليه. just one announcement tomorrow اللي ساكنين في ناتك الانتخابات لو سجلنا لو عملنا registration للانتخابات بتاعت ال parent community yeah you have to go tomorrow لازم نروح بكرة ونسجل للي ساكنين في ناتك.
Hi everyone.
For the YouTube, do I have to for the YouTube? The live stream can't hear you without it.
Oh, okay. All right. Hi everyone. Good afternoon. I'm a very smiley person. But I'm going to be even more smiley if you don't come up to the front. So to save yourselves, come to the front. This is actually like a talk that needs us to like talk together a little bit. So everybody needs to have people next to them. So come عشان دول ما يبقوش لوحديهم. Okay? Okay, come. Please come. If you can, yani please, if you can come to the front, if you're comfortable, that would be great. But if you have a baby, that's okay. Because I have a very good view of the baby, okay? Thank you. So, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm going to speak into the microphone even though I don't need it because my parents are actually watching from home. So, my name is Maggie Ibrahim. I'm really, really happy to be here. Some crazy person thought it would be a good idea for me to come. Not always, okay? Because there were some questions that were brought up in this forum about schools and about teaching, and it would make sense to bring me because I am a teacher by trade. So I have worked actually, I'll tell you a little bit about myself because I think when you have a speaker that you know who they are, it helps you connect more, okay? So I have worked as a teacher for many years. I've been in education for about 10 years. And I also actually have taught almost every grade. So I've taught middle school, high school, college. There was a very dark period where I taught the younger kids. That was very short. And I now ironically have 2 children myself, Alexandria, who's 4, and Luke, who is 14 months and like Muftaris, okay? And I'm married to Samer. You might see him sometimes on Sundays. We go to this liturgy. He's a doctor. He's a very wonderful man. And I'm very lucky. I really love my family a lot. It's because I love my family and my kids so much that actually I'm going to talk to you about the topic I'm going to talk about today. Because everything that I talk about today is stuff that I apply to my own parenting and my own teaching. So this is all very close to my heart. It's not just a job for me. Okay? So the topic for today is understanding how we can use our self-awareness about ourselves to help us know our kids and understand their experience. It's also to understand the concept of something called a third culture. And a lot of times here in church, we talk about ourselves as Copts and as Egyptians. Maybe someone here is not Egyptian. You're from a different culture. This all still applies. And a lot of times I get asked questions about, Maggie, how do we protect the kids from insert whatever it is that year? Okay? Because I will tell you this. There's so much to protect our kids from, and every year it is different. Okay? Every year. That is how the world is. And that's actually how politics goes and culture wars go. Every year, all the time, since the beginning of time, schools are the place where culture wars come about. Okay? So what I'm going to talk about today is not actually going to be how to defend your kids from A, B, or C. I'm actually going to talk about how to prevent them from following just whatever anytime in their life. Okay? And that has to do with talking about identity.
ماجي هتتكلم عن ازاي نفهم نفسنا ويبقى عندنا وعي ذاتي ووعي داخلي علشان نقدر نساعد أولادنا في خبرات الحياة ويتصرفوا أفضل. اللي هي قالته انه مع ان الواحد يفهم نفسه يحمي عياله من ما يسمى بالثقافه الثالثه، اللي هي مش حاجه في حد ذاتها، هي الثقافه المتغيره على حسب الوقت وعلى حسب السنه وعلى حسب الزمن. كل سنه بيطلع لنا حاجه جديده في المدارس في المجتمع بتاعنا عيالنا بيواجهوها. فالنهارده مش هنفهم خطوات بعينها ازاي ندافع عن عيالنا او كده، لكن هو اسلوب تربيه واسلوب حياه، ازاي عن طريق الحاجات اللي جوانا نقدر نحمي عيالنا من ان هم يمشوا ورا الثقافات اللي كل شويه يجوا او يتبعوها عمياني.
Thank you, Hiba. I love Hiba. So, this is me when I was younger. As you can see, she's very cute. يعني برضو very cute هنا, okay? So, we're going to take a minute. I want to do a little exercise, okay? I want you to close your eyes. ما تخافوش, ما فيش حد هيضربكم, okay? Close your eyes. I want you to imagine a moment. ما فيش حد قافل عينه على فكرة, okay? Okay, thank you. Top student. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to imagine a moment when you were younger and you were growing up. Maybe you were like 10, 11 years old. I want you to try to pick a time or day that you remember very well. And I want you to ask yourself, okay, is this in the United States? Is this in Egypt? Maybe you grew up somewhere else. And if you could describe yourself at that time, how would you do it? Just like get the memory first, okay? How would you do it? How would you describe yourself at that time? Happy. Okay, you can open your eyes. I want you to take out your phone and open your notes app and just write down like 4 or 5 words that came to your head. Yalla اسمعوا كلام. Okay, let's go. 4 or 5 words that came to your head. It could be, I was so farhana. Okay? Or I was so harrana. Okay, can I keep going? Keep this notepad open on your phone. Okay? So far A+, كله A+. Okay. Now we're going to try this with our kids. These are my kids. They're so cute, right? Okay. They never like behave in church. This is like very false. Okay. We're going to try the same thing that you just did for yourself with one of your kids. I want you to try to think of your kids. You could think of your kids together, or you could think, if you have one kid, you could just think of your one child. Try to pick a memory and try to think about it from their perspective. And if your child could describe themselves at this time, how would they do it? So I'll give you an example. I'll think of my daughter, Alexandria. She's a lot. Okay. She's 4. And if I'm thinking about a day, I would think maybe her first day of school when she was 3. And she was very happy. And that's a day I can remember very well. Okay? And then if I was going to write 4 to 5 words to describe her at this time, I would write naive, would be the first one. Excited, happy, and energetic. Okay? Now try to do this with your kids. I want everyone to take their notes or their notepad. Think of a memory with your child. If you don't have children, you can think of like your sibling, or you can think of another time for yourself. This one is harder, right? need more time? Okay. So, let's talk about it. How did your image of yourself differ from the one of your children? Does anyone want to be brave and share? Okay, here's what we're going to do. I want you to talk to the person next to you about how this was, okay? And then I'm going to ask people to talk, all right? So, talk to the person next to you. It could be your spouse or your friend, or it could be someone you're going to meet right now. Talk to someone next to you about how this image was different for you. Like, how did the words come about for you? How was it different from your children? So I'll give you an example. Let's say, for example, for you, you wrote down, like, very happy, I was very strong. And like you're thinking about yourself, like in the streets of Cairo, okay? And then when you wrote for your children, it was the same. You wrote happy, joyful, or you wrote for your children and it was like nervous, stressed. However it is, just talk to the person next to you. I'm going to walk around and see what you're saying. Nasty. Okay. Okay, I believe it. Okay. Okay. You have someone right here on Twitter. She's so cute. You're so cute. Hi. She's so cute. She's so well behaved on Twitter. Okay, خلاص, I'm sorry. Yes. هتزعقي already? Okay.
I don't have all my kids have بس كنت more happy than them.
Okay.
كانش عندي كل
That's
حاجة
very
ده.
common. That's very
And I told
common.
them كده اهو بقول
That's
لهم.
very common, by the way.
دي بقى سيادة على طول.
She's so cute. She's so cute. That's very common. We're going to talk about that.
I always thought
That's very
ما
common.
كانش عندي كل اللي عندكم وكنت more happy.
Yes, that is very common. Okay. How about you guys? Okay.
البراءة يعني
Yeah.
innocent.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah.
innocent.
Yeah. Home they're not innocent. Okay. Very good point.
قناعة ما عندهمش قناعة
Yeah.
يعني كان عندنا قناعة بأقل
Yeah.
حاجة يعني
Yeah.
ما عندهمش قناعة.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not forgetting about this side. I'm coming. You can see what kind of teacher I am. Okay. Hey, how are we doing over here? Are you guys married?
Yeah.
هيبقى في مشاكل على فكرة لما نروح. How was it for you?
For me,
Okay, so I'm going to summarize some of the things I heard, and honestly, I heard some great things. So some people said, when I was younger, I was much happier with less, right? Like, I didn't have as much as my kids have now, but I was much happier. Other people said, like, I was innocent. My kids are not innocent, right? Like, they have more stress or they have more anxiety. Other people said, you know, like, I felt free. Like, I could, like, do whatever I wanted. I was always around my family, and my kids, maybe they don't have as much family around. So we're highlighting something very interesting here, and it was very common in everyone. There was a sense of innocence and freedom and playfulness that maybe you had growing up in Egypt that maybe your kids don't have now. Maybe your kids have it if they're very young, but as they get older, that's starting to go away. And I would challenge us all to realize that actually that's not a coincidence. And that's not just because of their age. That's also because of their identity. So, when I talk about identity, this is a definition of critical identities. Our identities is like so many things. It's our personalities. It's our background, like our family background. It's our life history. Like, I'll tell you, since the beginning of time, you all knew me before I got married. If you have been to this church for a long time, I've been coming to this church since I was 4, okay? Now I'm married with kids. My last name is Metri. Giddu Metri. Ana Arfa, from when I was younger, that Giddu Metri was chased by a shark, okay? So anytime I go in an ocean, I'm like, it's in my blood. Okay, like it could happen to me. So even like certain things like in your history, your family background, that impacts how you live. And I'm saying that as a joke, but also seriously, I'm scared of sharks, okay? Your educational training. And like so many things can impact who we are and how we appear. And there's just so many things when I talk about identity, it can be so many things. Some of these things we don't like to talk about, right? Like we don't like to talk about money and how much money we have. We all grow up at different levels of income throughout our lives, when we're younger, when we're older, right? That has an impact on how we live and who we are. If you have a disability, some people, they grow up in a wheelchair. Some people have a learning disability. Your gender, if you're a man or a woman, that impacts how you live. Your religion. All of us here have a shared religion, but even in the way we practice religion, some people, like when they fast St. Mary's fast from August 1, okay? Some people, when they fast St. Mary's fast from August 7. I fast from August 8 because August 8 is my birthday, okay? So we all kind of, even in our religion, we do things differently. Our age, right? I'm in my 30s. If you're in your 40s or 50s or whoever, or whenever, like we all live life differently according to our age. Our nationality, I think everyone here is Egyptian, but it's possible you may not be. That impacts how we live, our primary language, how we socialize with our family and our community, our job, and there's so many other things. But when I talk about identity, I mean all of this, okay? I think now is
ماجي بتتكلم عن الهوية مش الهواية. الهوية وازاي هي بتأثر فينا وداخل فيها حيثيات أساسيات بتخلينا عندنا أفكار مسبقة وحاجات مسبقة بتملي جزء من اختياراتنا أو تصرفاتنا بعدم إدراك إن دي وراها. من ضمن الحاجات الكتيرة اللي بتأثر على الهوية بتاعتنا ممكن يكون احنا تربينا بطريقه دينيه ازاي، بالتزام، بعدم التزام، السن اللي احنا فيه دلوقتي بيؤثر علينا وبيؤثر على افكارنا، المستوى الاجتماعي اللي تربينا فيه، يعني في حاجات قديمه وفي حاجات بتحصل لنا دلوقتي. الوظيفه، نوع الشغل اللي انا اتدربت عليه واسلوب الشغل والطريقه اللي انا بضطر ابين نفسي فيها، القصص الاسريه، انا اتربيت بسمع قصص ايه عن والدي، والدتي، جدي، جدتي، ازاي دي بتسيب اثر جوانا وبتاثر بطريق غير مباشر عن الهويه بتاعتنا. حاجات زي البلد المنشأ، التعدد الجنسيات عند الواحد، كل الحاجات دي بتاثر على الهويه.
So, what about our kids? When you thought about yourself versus your kids, it was very different. And this is because our children are something called third culture kids. Now, this is not a term I made up. This is a term made up by a sociologist. And actually, if you're wondering why I care about all this and you're like, إيه اللي دخل ده في التدريس? Okay? I'm actually getting my doctorate in education, and my focus is on immigrant students and like ethnic racial identity, because it actually has a huge impact on how our kids experience school. A huge impact. So third culture kids, and this is actually a picture. This is me in Sunday school in the baptism room, okay, on the right. If you remember me at this age, wow. I'm so sorry. And on the left is actually, if you know my mom is the second girl, okay? Hanan, she's so cute. And she's sitting by the Nile, and she's smiling, and she's adorable. And if she's watching, هتبهدلني, okay? So third culture kid is a kid who was raised in a culture other than their parents or the culture of the country of nationality, and they also live in a different environment during a very big portion of like the developmental years. So I am a third culture kid. Okay, so I'm not only talking to you today as a teacher, but I'm also talking to you as one of these kids, a third culture kid. My parents, my mom is from Cairo, from Menyel, and my dad is also from the Menyel, and they grew up in Egypt until they came here in their late 30s, and they raised me in Massachusetts and my brother in a very different environment from the environment they were growing up in. So that's what a third culture kid is. It's possible my daughter will also be a third culture kid, even though she's going to be raised in America and I was also raised in America, because our experience is still very different, okay? So,
الثقافة الثالثة اللي هي المبدأ اللي بنتكلم عليه النهاردة هو أي طفل بيتربى في مجتمع مختلف عن المجتمع اللي أهله اتربوا فيه. يعني ممكن يكون الأب من حتة ومنشأه وطفولته وحياتهم معظمها اتمضت في حتة، والأم كذلك في بلد تانية، في مكان تاني، في جو تاني، إذا كانت مدينة أو قرية، حجم المكان واللغة اللي كانت والثقافة اللي كانت سايدة. فالأطفال بيتولدوا في حتة تانية. فماجي كانت بتقول إن هي نفسها مع إن باباها ومامتها الاثنين من القاهرة، بس هي تعتبر اتربت في الثيرد كالتشر دي أو الثقافة الثلاثية، لأن ثقافتها مختلفة عنهم. هي اتولدت هنا واتربت هنا، ومع إن هي متربية هنا ومولودة هنا، بس ولادها اللي هي بتربيهم دلوقتي برضو ممكن يكونوا تحت الثقافة الثلاثية دول، لأن الخبرات الحياتية كونها كان أهلها الناس دي وكون ولادها خبراتهم مختلفة برضو، فده برضو ممكن يملي الثقافة الثلاثية.
Oh, also, I'm going to embarrass my uncle, Karam Lawindi. He's the one on the right in that amazing tring, okay? Karam Lawindi, right there, folks, okay? If he's watching, hello. Okay, so, كلهم هيقتلوني, okay? So, I'm going to show you something that's very related to this, and it's kind of illuminating. I mean, this looks very boring, but it's very exciting, actually, and it's not just because I'm a nerd. So there's something called the Cultural Dimensions Index. It was created by a cultural psychologist, and countries are evaluated by a number. The countries that are extremely individualistic, like very self-oriented, individual effort is like favored in business. It's competition over cooperation. These are the countries with a very high number. The countries with a very low number is a more collectivist country. And that is like, they think as groups. The relationships are very important to like business or learning. And it's always valuing cooperation over competition. I found this very interesting when I first saw this many years ago. The United States has a score of 91. This is where we are all living right now. And Egypt, I circled both of them. I don't know if you can tell. Egypt has a score of 38. So if you want tangible proof that you might be growing up in a very different kind of environment to your children, you literally have a number that you can think about. You should explain this.
الثقافة cultural dimensions. جوانب الثقافة أو أبعاد الثقافة، الأبعاد الثقافية ده لفظ اخترعه حد من الدكاترة بتاعة السيكولوجيا الثقافية، وبيدوا رقم، بيعملوا حسبة معينة آخرها بيجمعوا الحاجات اللي هم بيدوها نمر، بيطلع رقم إجمالي ده بيبين جوانب الثقافة دي. فالثقافة اللي هي أكتر شخصية مرتبطة بالشخص أو بالأهداف الشخصية، بأن الواحد يوصل لحاجات مادية أكتر، حاجات ليها علاقة بالبزنس أكتر زي أمريكا. وفي الثقافة المختلفة اللي هي الكولكتيفست أو الجماعية، أنا مش بقول ألفاظ يعني دقيقة مترجمة بالظبط، بس يعني كولكتيفست جماعية هي اللي أكتر مرتبطة حوالين المجموعة والأسرة، وإن هدفنا يكون موحد، كلنا نتحسن، التعليم يكون موحد في معظم الناس. ففي ثقافة أكتر اجتماعية شاملة أو شمولية أكتر، شمولية الكلمة الأصح يعني. فلو عايزين تقارنوا برقم عشان تثبتوا ازاي عيالكم مختلفين عنكم، الجدول ده بيثبت كده. أمريكا هي أول نوع من الثقافة اللي هي الثقافات الفردية، ورقم عالي جدا، يعني هي أعلى واحدة في الجدول أصلا من غير ما أشوف حاجة، هي نمبر 1 فوق لوحدها. ومصر واخدة رقم 38 اللي هو أقل من النص أو تلت تقريبا الرقم ده. فهي أكتر تجاه الثقافة الجماعية عن الثقافة الفردية.
So when we talk about culture, there's different kinds of culture. And if you're wondering how this relates to our kids' experience in school, I'm going to connect this for you after, okay? When we talk about culture, there's something called surface culture, which is like food, dress, holidays. Like if I am celebrating Christmas on January 7 versus December 25, this is something with a low emotional charge. Okay? Our kids can go to school and be like, I actually don't celebrate Christmas on December 25. I celebrate on January 7. It's not going to be too intense of a conversation or a thought. Then there is shallow culture. These are like specific terms. This is like unspoken rules around every day and norms such as like courtesy, attitudes towards elders. Like we all like, احترم الأكبر مننا, you know? Personal space. Concepts of time, Egyptian time, nature of friendship, rules about eye contact, appropriate touching, and strong, this is us all, a strong emotional charge. Everyone knows here, growing up in Egypt, you're not going to go up to someone and like hit them, right? If you went to a place or you were growing up somewhere where they were like, you know what, actually here we all hit people. Okay? This is how we say hello. You would have a strong emotional charge to that. It's also the same thing. I actually have friends who grew up here, and when they go to Egypt, they never went to Egypt before. They were born here, they went to Egypt. And when they see the kissing, okay, like on each cheek, that has a strong emotional charge for them. They're like, everyone here is kissing each other. I thought this was a very modest country. Okay? Like that has a strong emotional charge for them. But the one that has a very serious emotional charge, and this is where like our kids, we really have to understand this concept, is deep culture, okay? So this is specific knowledge and unconscious assumptions that govern our worldview. This can be like views about men and women, okay? Like a man always has to be the leader, or a woman always has to be the leader. This is something that is very like, that's a deep culture view. I'm not saying God is the leader, okay? I'm just going to say that. But I'm saying like as far as a type of deep culture, it includes our view of good and bad, our spirituality, our religion, our health, okay? And even the way we interact in a group, like if you value cooperation versus competition. Like I'll give you an example. I have a friend who moved to the United States when she was 31. Okay? And when she started working, she said one of the most stressful things to her was that everyone in her workplace always wanted to make themselves look amazing. And it wasn't like you're thinking about the whole group. And that was a way that she saw growing up in the United States versus growing up in Egypt being very different for her. Okay? That's something I'm going to talk about. Not everybody's experience is the same. But when our kids go home and experience something that is different at school or around their friends, they might experience a literal shock. Okay? Like a trigger of shock or the brain's fight or flight response. I'll give you an example. In my old job, I used to work with a lot of immigrant students, and I had a student who was from Saudi Arabia. One could argue that even though Saudi Arabia is a mostly Muslim country, much of the Arab world has a type of like ihtiram. Okay? And this student, he came to me, he was like, Miss, I need to report something. These boys are talking about this female student in a very inappropriate way. Okay? And he was like crying. Like he was like a teenager. He was like a high school boy. And he had just moved from Saudi Arabia like only a year or two before. But he was so like physically uncomfortable with the way that these students were talking about women. Now, I'm not saying that like this person comes from an environment and we're talking about like Egypt or America as any environment where like there is not good and bad, right? But this person felt that the way these students were talking about women was so against the way that he was raised, he was crying, like he was uncomfortable. I will give you another example. Sometimes when our kids are not in church and they're in school and they experience something like that feels not Christian, okay? That feels atheist. Like sometimes in school they will read texts that examine different worldviews. And one worldview might be that God does not exist. That might be really uncomfortable for them. And they might be really like scared. Right? They won't feel good. And it's not just because they feel that that is wrong, and we know that that's wrong, right? But they're not going to like feel good. Like they're going to feel fight or flight. Okay? So I want to show you this because when I talk about how our kids experience school, there's so many layers to how they experience it and what they might feel. And that's why it's really important to understand this.
الثقافة فيها طبقات. الطبقة الأولى اللي هي السطحية خالص هي الحاجات اللي ليها علاقة بفرق الأكل ما بين ثقافة وثقافة، النوع الموسيقى اللي بيسمعوها، طريقة اللبس كده، ودي بيبقى معاها نقدر نقول إيه شحنة عاطفية بتطلع من الواحد تجاه الحاجات المختلفة دي بسيطة جدا. يعني أنا التصرف بتاعي لما بشوف الاختلاف ده بيكون حاجة بسيطة مش حاجة كبيرة مش بتستنزف مشاعر كتيرة. وبعدين في طبقة بعد كده اللي هي الطبقة الغير عميقة أو المضحلة يعني، ودي داخل فيها حاجات أكتر بكتير، ودي فيها حاجات أكتر في التعاملات اليومية، زي مثلا اسلوب المخاطبه. احنا نقول حضرتك، ده يناديك باسمك على طول، ما فيش اسم. مثلا في مصر بنقول ام فلان، في حتت كتيره ما نقولش اسم الست، هنا لا. حاجات زي كده، فكره احترام الوقت، ان الواحد يجي في وقت مظبوط. طبعا احنا موعدنا المصري قمر. طريقه الصداقه، التوقعات من ان الواحد يسمي التاني صديق، ايه مدى التوقعات؟ يبقى انت لازم تجيلي، يبقى في مجاملات معينه تحت الصداقه دي، هنا مش شرط تكون موجوده مثلا. دي بتستنزف منا طاقه مشاعر او شحنه عاطفه اعلى. وممكن في بعض منا، على حسب ماجي كانت بتقول ان كل واحد منا ممكن جوه الطبقه الضحله دي يبقى له رياكشنز مختلفه. في حد ممكن يتاثر جدا وحد يتاثر اقل، ففي منظور شخصي داخل في الحته الضحله دي. واخر حاجه هي الثقافه العميقه، ودي داخل فيها المبادئ الاكبر، الحاجات الحياتيه والايمانيه، الحاجات اللي هي اكتر مرتبطه بالخير والشر، والامور اللي هي ليها دعوه بالدين او الفكر الجماعي زي ما قلنا، زي التناسق بتاع المجموعه او فكر المجموعه. ودي بتطلع طاقه كبيره جدا من عاطفيه، ويوجلي الواحد لما بيحس بيها او بيحس بتضاد فيها عكس مبادئه وهويته، بيخش في حاجه الادرينالين بيجي في الجسم، وبيبقى عنده نوع من انواع يا اما الخناق او الهروب، لان ده الشيء اللي ربنا خلقه لما الادرينالين بيطلع. فده اقصى حاله من الشحنه العاطفيه اللي بتيجي. وهي ادت كذا مثال، زي مثال لما مثلا اولادنا يكونوا في المدرسه ويتكلموا عن الخليقه مثلا، احنا بنقول لهم يسوع وربنا اللي خلق هناك بيقولوا لا creation البيج بانج مثلا. فبالنسبه لولادنا دي ممكن يبقى فيها التضاد ده وتسيب لهم الشحنه العاطفيه الجامده دي.
Okay, so because we're short on time, I'm not going to make you all do group work. But it's important for us as we're moving forward, think about like an example or a way this manifests in your life or your children's life, okay? There is something that we always say. We always say, like, you know, like when you come to America, you need to assimilate. Please don't assimilate. I'm going to tell you why. Assimilation is when you move to a place and you completely adopt everything that is in that dominant culture. And we would say the dominant culture is American culture here. And you would totally reject Egyptian culture, okay? And this is actually something that used to be said by like President Reagan. Many years ago, President Reagan would say, we want immigrants to come here and we want them to assimilate. Now, they are very good with research and they have realized assimilation is actually a complete erasing of a new culture's identity. Okay? What we actually want and what I would recommend to everyone is always encourage something called acculturation. Acculturation is when you take the best from the culture you came from and the best from the culture that is here and you make a new identity. Okay? I'm going to tell you something that is personal, that is kind of sad, but I'm going to tell you. Like 3 years ago or 2 years ago, my family and I went to Egypt, my husband and I and my daughter. It was our first time taking my daughter to Egypt. I was at the time in a job where I actually did anti-racism work, like عنصرية. I saw many, many things, many sad situations. And I was like, I want to leave America forever. Like, and I'm done. Okay. I want to go back to Egypt. I don't want to be here anymore. I went back to Egypt. My husband and my daughter and I went for a whole summer. I was actually pregnant with my son at the time. So no gibna bida and no bastarma. But I realized that I don't belong in Egypt either. I don't belong in Egypt. I don't belong in America. The only place, I might cry while I say this, the only place I feel at home is here. Okay? The only place that it feels like my true home is here, this church that I have grown up in since I was 4. Okay? Because everyone here has a very similar experience. We're all Egyptians, we're all Coptic, growing up in the United States. Outside of this place, it's different, right? Like you may not meet people who are experiencing the same issues, with the same values, the same view of God. But I would be lying to you if I told you that I think everything in American culture is bad, or I think everything in Egyptian culture is bad or good. I think the best technique for our kids is to take the good from here and take the good from here and create a new identity. And that is what we should all be trying to do. And that is what, like, sociologists and teachers, cannot apply. Tell me why. Yeah. I understand. Yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah. It's very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. But it is, I would say for our kids and the age that they're growing up in and the time that we're in, this is the way, because like I told you, this talk started with people always come to me and they're like, how can I protect my child from this in school? How can I protect my child from this in school? Number one, the most important thing is have your identity in God. Right? That's the most important thing. But also don't forget that you can cultivate that identity. This third culture identity is what I'm arguing. Sometimes, like, I would come home from school and I would be like, Mama, I want to go to a dance. Okay? I'm not downing if your kids go to dances or not. But when I was younger, can I go to the dance? And my mom would be like, ما بنروحش dances. إحنا مصريين. Okay? And then another time, after September 11, I would be like, yeah, somebody asked me today where I'm from. And I said to them, I'm Egyptian. You're American. Okay? Don't tell them you're Egyptian. You're American. This is after September 11. Okay? So, like, they were very worried about me. And my mom would be like, Bisi Salib. Like, بيني الصليب, okay? They were like so worried about me. And I honestly, they had a right to be. So we're always like dancing between like which culture we should be. And my point here is like, try your best to not say, خلاص احنا مش من مصر. We're going to leave behind all of Egypt and خلاص أمريكاني. Or I'm Egyptian. We're not American at all. Our kids need us to try to have both. Okay? So how does this all relate? Unfortunately, in my work, and this is why like I'm going to dedicate like my whole life to this work. Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh, you want to say Oh yes. The reason why I'm talking about all of this is, unfortunately, when we don't acknowledge that our kids have these problems or have these struggles and that they're going to feel a pull, like, am I American? Am I Egyptian? Am I Christian? Right? Like, they're always asking themselves this question. There is a lot of research that shows that children from immigrant households or immigrant students feel very lonely. Okay? Lonely. Okay? They feel isolated. They may feel a lack of confidence, right? They might be less likely to take up a leadership role, okay, in school or in the workplace. And the saddest thing about this is that there's a lot of research that shows that, like I just told you that when I was in my 30s, I went to Egypt and I was like, I'm going to move back because I'm sick of America. I've seen so much racism in my work here and there's just so much, I need to go back to Egypt. I went to Egypt and I was like, I cannot live here. Like, so even in my 30s, I was feeling an inability to feel a sense of like belonging, okay? All of this, like what I've said today and all of the work in this field asks us to imagine that if we do something like acculturation, or if we have an awareness of third culture or of identity, we can avoid these things. And our kids can actually live a very accomplished, successful life in school and in work. And then when they see things that like we don't agree with in school or in work, we're actually not going to be too worried about them because they know who they are. That's what it is. They know who they are. And it won't matter if they're 17 and they're in school and they're seeing something that's not something that aligns with your values, or if they're at a job and they're being asked to do something and maybe they're not comfortable with it. Like, it's going to just be forever. Okay?
السلايد اللي فاتت can we go back to the assimilation? I'm just gonna so اللي usually بيحصل الناس هنا بتقول لكم دوبوا جوه انسوا كل حاجه ودوبوا وامتصوا الثقافه بتاعت امريكا اللي هي assimilation دي ان هي احنا كلنا خلاص سيبنا مصر بقينا امريكان نعيش عيشه الامريكان ونمتص كل الحاجات اللي في المجتمع وماجي بتقول دي اوحش حاجه ممكن تعملوها يعني ما تنصحكوش بكده like it's
not helpful or healthy long term. Okay,
so,
not the worst thing.
اوكي الacculturation اللي هي استيعاب الحضارات ومزج الحضارات هي ان احنا نمزج احسن حاجه موجوده في الحضاره الحاليه اللي احنا عايشين فيها والحضاره بتاعتنا اللي احنا جايين منها وندمج الاثنين ونخلق بيها الهويه الثالثه اللي هي كانت بتقول نزرعها في عيالنا وناخد افضل حاجات موجوده في الاثنين. الحاجة التانية ان في حاجات كتيرة مظبوطة بتقول الاطفال اللي جايين من هويات صغيرة او مش ظاهرة كتير في المجتمع او ناس من اصول مش موجود كمية كبيرة في المجتمع بيبقى عندهم احساس بالوحدة مش عندهم ثقة بالنفس كتير مش قدام بيبقى نسبة قليلة منهم قوي اللي بياخدوا أدوار قيادية في المجتمع. فبالتالي لما احنا نخلق لهم الهوية اللي تشجعهم على كده، وانهم يلاقوا مكان ويلاقوا نفسهم جوه الايدنتيتي، الفكر الذاتي اللي موجود، الهوية المظبوطة اللي بنخلقها جواهم، ده هيخليهم يتخطوا كل الحاجات دي في المستقبل. وده اهم حاجة. فاول حاجة نثبت ربنا طبعا، بس الحاجة التانية ان احنا ندمج الحاجات حسب ما احنا شايفين افضل شيء هنا وافضل شيء هنا.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to give you some ideas to fix this, okay? So the first thing that you did that is amazing is that you just let me talk for this whole time and you listened, okay? Because literally just you having this information is very powerful, okay? Now when we talk about like our kids and how we can establish this relationship with them and this awareness and combat these problems, these are some strategies. I'm going to give you levels of strategies. So affirmation and validation. Let's say, for example, your kid comes home and they're like, Mama, I am so sick of having fool for lunch. The kids make fun of me and it's like, it's not okay. It doesn't feel good. Don't say, لا احنا بنصوم. Okay? Say, I understand. It's very hard. Sometimes it's hard for me. Just don't even try to like, oh, we're Coptic. You need to fast. We've been fasting. No, I mean, like that's true. But you can just say, I understand. This is very hard. Lent is very difficult. Okay? And just validate. I understand. I hear you. Another one is building trust and rapport. And trust begins with listening. If they come home, and I know this gets harder as they get older. I know for me, like, during high school, like my relationship with my parents was not the same as it was when I was younger and when I was older. Now my parents are like my best friends. And I'm like, Allah kun fa'unkum. I feel so bad for you, okay? About what you went through with me and Mark. It's very difficult. Just listen, okay? When your kids come to you, just listen. And suspend judgment as much as possible. This is very important. Every time your child comes to you and says, like, a story or tells you about something that made them feel lonely, try your best to not expend any judgment. Just listen and affirm and validate. And I know that's sometimes difficult, okay? But try your best to just affirm and validate. And last but not least, sharing your own vulnerable moments. Like, I'll give you an example. This actually broke my heart, but the other day, my daughter, Alexandria, who's born after the city of Alexandria, she came to me. And we were just talking, and actually, like, I'm trying to teach her Arabic because I'm also trying to better my Arabic. And she was like, Mama, nobody else in my class speaks Arabic. I was like, wow, that is like a very big realization for someone who is 4. And she's like, I don't want to speak Arabic. And in that moment, I was like, my whole life is over, okay? Like, I was like, everything I have ever done is pointless and gone. But I was just like, it's really hard to know 2 languages, isn't it? And she was like, yeah. I was like, what if we tried to like make a game out of it? Okay. And I just tried to like be playful about it. But I was like, I'm not going to push her. But then like the next day she was like, Mom, I'm ready for my Arabic lesson. So try your best to not push judgment. Try your best. I mean, this is like a very adorable story. Of course, there are much more serious ones. But like, try your best not to push, suspend any judgment, and just be there. Just listen and just be there. And I actually told Alexandria at my own vulnerable moment, which was, you know, a lot of times it was really hard for me growing up when I would go home and Tita Hanan and Giduriz would speak Arabic, and in school I would speak English. And that was very hard for me sometimes. That's it. That's all. Just telling her that I have been through things like that too. Okay? So what else can we do? This is mulukhiyya, my favorite food. I'm telling you, like, most important is the stuff that I just told you about. Now I'm going to go to like additional things you can do, but you get to decide what this is. Maybe you are a household that does not cook a lot of Egyptian food. Maybe you only cook Egyptian food. Whatever is the most important to you as a parent for your identity, that's what you should try to do. Okay? And I also have here the palms. That's a very big, beautiful part of our tradition. Trying our best to encourage that with our kids is really important. And now, this is like totally extra, okay? But this is also something that you can do. A couple years ago, when my husband and I took Alexandria to Egypt for the first time, we just decided that as parents, we're going to make it a commitment because this is important to us personally to try to take our kids to Egypt as often as possible. Okay? I'm not telling you that is the right thing to do. I'm telling you that's what's right for me. Okay? That is not right for everybody. It could be that like the way that you choose to stay in touch with your identity is totally different from this. I'm not telling you that this is the right thing to do. I'm just telling you Maggie's version of what's right. And you get to decide what that's like for your family. So I took Alexandria. You could see me walking here in the Menyel, and I took her to the Menyel. I showed her Knesset Merigirgis, which is where I went when I was younger. Samer, that's Samer, and that's Alexandria on his head, and Muharram Bey in Alexandria. And that is Alexandria with Abu Namina Aboud, who's one of my favorite saints. And then that's Alexandria with an Arabic book. Okay? These are all things that I've tried to do with my husband to stay connected to my identity from my family. Okay? Like I said, you will decide what is right for your family. And the most important one is this one. This right here is the most important way to combat all the things that I talked about. Okay. Yeah. No, I think you should. Okay. No, it was not answered. Okay. I will answer. Okay. I just.
So ملخص سريع، هي ماجي بتقول احسن حاجه تعملوها انكم تسمعوا وشكرتكم انكم سمعتوها، وتسمعوا الولاد وتصدقوا اللي هم بيقولوه. يعني الافرميشن هو التصديق، او ان انا ادي مساحه للولاد انهم يعبروا عن مشاعرهم. ما جيش بسرعه بالرد بتاع لا مش عارف ايه احنا بنعمل كده، اللي هو السك بالبلدي. انت ما كنتيش هتطلعي بالسك دي. ما نسكش على عيالنا لما يتكلموا، نديهم مساحه انهم يعبروا عن نفسهم. وفاليديشن انه لو قالوا شعور مع الجمله، ده كان صعب، ده كان حاجه تقيله عليا، العيال بصوا لي بطريقه معينه، اصدق على الشعور ده، اديهم مساحه ان يبقى من حقهم يشعروا بحاجه مختلفة عن اللي في ذهني أنا، لأن ده شعور شخصي ودي experience شخصية. الحاجة التانية هي إن الواحد يبني علاقة قوية وثقة ما بيننا وبين الولاد وصداقة، ودي بتيجي بإن أنا أسمع وأديهم مساحة إنهم يتكلموا. الحاجة التالتة إن أنا ما نطش وقرر قرار مسبق أو يبقى عندي فكرة مسبقة مبنية أقولها. هي ماجي كانت بتحكي الحكايه دي وانا كل جاي في بالي انا لما كنت صغيره كنا والليسته تنزل، احنا لما كنا كان ما فيش بيت مصري ما بيتردش على العيال كده مثلا 3 مرات في اليوم. انتوا مش دريانين انتوا ايه اللي عندكم، ده احنا كنا، ده انا كنت، ده بابا كان، ده انت ما شفتش تيتا، انت ما شفتش تربيه جده، انتوا مش دريانين بالبركه اللي انتوا فيها whatever it might be. So that's the judgment she's talking about. كلنا we're guilty of it. We have to stop that. يعني لان دي بتقطع انها تبقى تواصل. خلاص انا حكمت على الطفل انت مختلف عني، كأني فعلا قلت له ثقافتك هويتك مختلفة عني، مش تعالى نتكلم عنا كوحدة أسرية. وآخر حاجة هي نشارك أولادنا بخبراتنا اللي احنا كمان فيها كان عندنا شعور وحسينا بنقطة ضعف أو بإحراج أو المشاركة دي بتوحد الروح وبتوحد الفكر. فدي أهم حاجات. I think that's okay.
Okay. I'm going to answer your question. Okay. Are there any other questions? I need him as help with your question. Let me see if there's other questions first, because we can answer it privately. Okay. Are there other questions? Okay. Yes. Okay. I'm going to talk to you after. Okay. So I'm going to tell you this. You're not going to like my answer. There is no, she's asking, how can we protect our kids from the things that you've been seeing in school? Okay? I told you. أمال ده إيه ده? Okay? أمال ده إيه ده? This is so powerful. This is very I'm telling you, when your kids have a relationship with God, B, a relationship with you, and you are just with them, like أنا معاك. Okay? I can go to mama and I can tell her what's going on. I know who I am. I'm Coptic. I'm Egyptian. I'm also American, right? Like I am all of these things. I am Egyptian, Coptic, American. I'm not always looking for something in school or in the world to make me feel complete. I'm not looking for something that's outside of what I believe to make me feel valued. If you know who you are, that's a really powerful thing. You think this is small. It's really not. I have a lot of research that shows this is what you need. Okay? Okay, I will come back. I mean, if I'm allowed back, okay? Okay, Mesh. Okay, I'm going to answer your question in private, okay? Okay, all right. Thank you all. I'm sorry I went long. Oh, there's a raffle. Lucky you. Okay? Okay. Thank you all so much.
Can you say the names so I don't like kill them?
ده البيرثديز طيب ناردين happy birthday it's March birthdays come on you're April what ما هي ناردين
ناردين سعيد دي مختلفه خلاص هي مش موجوده
اوكي نورين happy birthday مانا مش دي مانا هناء انت كاتباها مانا ليه هناء ايه ده هناء
فين هناء
هناء راحت فين كانت هنا
يا جماعه فين هناء موجوده انا عارفه موجوده
نزلت مش عارفه ايه طيب ناديه اهي دي حنان دي حاجه تانية حنان مخائيل
في حنان ميخائيل وفي هناء
اهي حنان مشيت حنان مجدي ابراهيم دول birthdays happy birthday
We're gonna do tickets.
خلاص كده عيد الميلاد
oh god I don't have my glasses on
I'll do
Lord
it.
Almighty. What?
Okay. All right, we're gonna do the tickets. We're gonna do the tickets. Everyone, take out your tickets. The last three numbers. The first one is 070. 070. Ah, Nardine, very good. Maggie's passing in the small ones. Come. Okay, next one. Next one is 071. 071. You got it? Yeah, one of these, right? The raffle, one of those. 071, right there. Very good. Awesome. Okay, last one. Last one. 0. I swear.